What's going on, everyone? Buckle up, because a storm is forming in Cleveland. And this one isn't about weather, winds, or bad luck. It's about whispers turning into headlines and a career suddenly hanging by a thread. This could END Jerry Jeudy's career. And the allegations pulling Shedeur Sanders into the spotlight? They're louder, uglier, and spreading faster than anyone expected. If you thought you'd seen every NFL controversy already, think again. This is Spill News, where secrets don't leak, they explode. One conversation, one moment, and suddenly the internet is asking questions nobody in that locker room wants answered. Fans froze. Analysts hesitated. Group chats went crazy. Because when a young quarterback's name collides with a veteran receiver's reputation, things get personal fast. Sources are whispering. Timelines don't line up. And now suspension isn't just a word, it's a threat. The internet couldn't believe it, and you won't either. If you were in this position, same pressure, same betrayal, same spotlight, what would you do? Stay quiet, fight back, or let the truth burn everything down? Because according to people close to the situation, somebody said too much. And once that door opened, it never closed again. And tonight, every detail comes into the light. The story doesn't start with a drop pass or a hot take on sports radio. It starts much earlier, in the quiet moments nobody clips for social media. Before the headlines, before the outrage, before Cleveland fans started arguing in comment sections like their lives depended on it. There was expectation, heavy expectation, the kind that follows a first-round talent everywhere he goes. Jerry Jeudy didn't arrive in Cleveland as just another receiver. He arrived with baggage, belief, and a reputation that split football circles straight down the middle. On one side, you had the highlights, the smooth routes, the college pedigree, the Alabama shine that never really fades. On the other side, you had whispers, coaches who never said much publicly, teammates who chose their words carefully, analysts who kept repeating the same phrase like a warning label. All the talent in the world. In the NFL, that sentence can be praise or prophecy, depending on how the story ends. When Cleveland made the move, fans talked themselves into it fast. They had to. A new chapter, a fresh start, a chance for Jeudy to finally silence the doubters who followed him out of Denver. And for a moment, it worked. Training camp clips looked clean. Interviews sounded mature. Social media posts showed smiles, workouts, captions about locked in a new era. On the surface, everything felt aligned. But football stories rarely crack at the surface. They crack underneath. Inside the building, the Browns were quietly reshaping their identity. A new offense, new priorities, and looming over everything was the presence of Shedeur Sanders. Young, confident, polarizing, the kind of quarterback who walks into a room already knowing people have opinions about him. Sanders didn't just bring an arm, he brought attention. Cameras followed him. Conversations changed when he spoke, and veterans noticed immediately. At first, the relationship looked professional, clean, standard, the usual quarterback-receiver cliches. We're building chemistry. We're taking it day by day. But then came the moments nobody quotes. A missed timing route here, a shrug there, a look held just a second too long after a play broke down. Small things, invisible to casual fans, loud to people who've lived inside locker rooms. Then came the messages, not official ones, not press releases, screenshots, allegedly, a DM thread that started circulating in private group chats before anyone dared post it publicly. Short lines, casual tone, the kind of conversation you only have when you think nobody's watching. One message, according to people who claim they saw it early, read, "I'm not running charity routes." Another replied, "Just do your job." No names attached, no timestamp confirmed, just enough to make people uncomfortable. That's when blogs started sniffing around. Anonymous sources close to the situation. Phrases reporters love because they can mean anything. Suddenly, articles popped up asking questions they didn't answer. Is there tension? Is the locker room divided? Is a rookie quarterback getting the respect he deserves? Every question felt innocent on its own. Together, They painted a picture nobody wanted to look at too closely. Jeudy, for his part, stayed calm publicly, maybe too calm. Interviews felt rehearsed. Smiles didn't quite reach the eyes. When asked about chemistry, he spoke in generalities. When asked about leadership, he deflected. Fans noticed. Cleveland always notices. This is a city trained by decades of disappointment to read between the lines. Then came the first crack that fans could actually see on the field. A route run half a step short. A ball that touched hands and fell anyway. The broadcast moved on, but Twitter didn't. Clips slowed down. Screenshots zoomed in. Narratives formed in real time. Was it miscommunication? Was it effort? Or was it something deeper that stats couldn't explain? Meanwhile, Sanders kept answering questions with the calm of someone who knew eyes were on him. He praised teammates. He took blame. He said all the right things. And that contrast made people uneasy. Because when one side looks composed and the other looks distant, the internet fills the gap fast. Behind the scenes, according to whispers that started leaking out, meetings got tense. Film sessions lingered longer than usual. Coaches paused tapes. Words like accountability started showing up in conversations that used to be about execution. No one said names publicly. They never do, but players know. They always know. Then another alleged screenshot surfaced. This one hit harder. A message sent late at night. 2 lines. They want me to play babysitter. Followed by, not what I signed up for. Again, no verification. No confirmation. Just enough fuel to keep the fire alive. By the next morning, podcasts were hinting. Radio hosts were teasing. Fans were connecting dots that may or may not have been real. And through it all, the Browns said nothing. Silence can be louder than denial. In Cleveland, silence feels familiar. It feels like the calm before something breaks. Players started choosing lockers carefully. Media availability became shorter. Even body language during warm-ups got dissected frame by frame. What made everything worse was timing. This wasn't happening in a vacuum. This was happening with a young quarterback trying to establish himself. Every miscue looked bigger. Every dropped opportunity felt personal. And every rumor tied the 2 names together tighter than either of them probably wanted. By the time the first national segment hinted at internal frustration, the story had already outrun the facts. Fans weren't asking if something was wrong anymore. They were asking how bad it was, and whether the organization was prepared for what might come next. Because once narratives harden, reversing them becomes nearly impossible, especially when egos, contracts, and futures collide under stadium lights. And just when it felt like the situation might cool down, when people thought maybe this was all noise, one incident changed the tone completely. Not a quote, not a tweet, something captured on tape that forced everyone to pay attention. And what came next, even his enemies didn't expect. The clip didn't drop with a warning. It never does. 1 minute. Fans were arguing about chemistry and routes. The next minute, timelines froze. Group chats went silent. And every conversation about Jerry Jeudy and Shedeur Sanders suddenly revolved around the same grainy piece of footage. It wasn't even supposed to be public, according to people who claimed they were in the room when it first circulated. The video started as an internal breakdown clip, practice footage. Nothing unusual, but buried in the last few seconds was an exchange nobody expected to see outside the facility. Sanders walking back toward the huddle, Jeudy turning away, words exchanged. No audio, but body language speaks its own language. Sanders points at his chest. Jeudy shakes his head. A coach steps between them just as the clip cuts. That was enough. By the time it hit social media, captions did the rest of the work. Locker room fracture. Veteran versus rookie. This is why the offense is broken. Nobody knew exactly what was said, but everyone suddenly knew how they felt about it. And that's when the alleged leaks escalated from whispers to something darker. Screenshots started surfacing that afternoon. Alleged private messages. Allegedly between Jeudy and someone described only as a trusted circle. The tone was bitter, defensive. One message that spread fast read, "They want to make me the fall guy." Another followed, I'm not risking my body for politics. Again, no verification. But the internet doesn't wait for verification. It reacts. Sports blogs jumped on it immediately. Headlines hedged just enough to stay safe. Unconfirmed messages raised questions. Sources claim frustration boiling over. Every article used the same language. Vague, careful, dangerous. Because once you suggest there's smoke, people assume there's fire. Then came the radio segment that pushed everything into overdrive. A Cleveland host, known for being blunt, opened his show by saying, "I've been sitting on this for a day and I can't anymore." That sentence alone was enough to spike ratings. He didn't name sources. He didn't quote messages directly, but he described a disconnect so deep it's affecting accountability. He said the words "possible discipline" out loud. And once those words entered the conversation, suspension talk wasn't hypothetical anymore. Fans exploded. Some took Jeudy's side immediately. Veterans deserve respect. Rookies need to earn it. They argued that Sanders hadn't proven enough yet to demand anything. Others flipped hard the other way. They saw entitlement, ego, a player protecting a brand instead of a team. And then there were the people who didn't care about sides at all. They cared about consequences. Because here's the thing nobody wanted to say out loud yet. The league watches everything. The NFL doesn't just punish actions. It punishes narratives when they spiral out of control. Conduct detrimental. Team disruption. Those phrases have ended careers before without a single arrest or charge. Late that night, a fake leaked memo started circulating. It looked official. Too official. NFL logo. Formal language. It referenced internal review and behavioral standards. Within an hour, it was debunked, but the damage was done. Even false documents can shape real perception. The next morning, reporters noticed something subtle but telling. Jeudy wasn't at his usual locker. He showed up late, answered questions quickly, avoided eye contact. Sanders, meanwhile, stayed after practice, signed autographs, smiled for cameras. That contrast didn't go unnoticed. One blogger wrote, "One man looks like he's fighting the noise. The other looks like the noise is fighting him." Then another name entered the story. A former player, anonymous at first, someone with credibility, someone fans recognized once hints dropped. He went on a podcast and said, "I've seen this movie before. When a vet feels threatened by the future, things get ugly fast." He didn't say Jeudy's name. He didn't say Sanders' name. He didn't have to. The comment sections filled in the blanks for him. By midweek, the narrative had fully shifted. This wasn't about drops or routes anymore. This was about power, about hierarchy, about whether a locker room was quietly choosing sides. And the Browns organization? Still silent. That silence fueled the most explosive rumor yet. A report claimed that a meeting had taken place behind closed doors. Players only. No coaches. No staff. A clear-the-air session that allegedly ended with raised voices, and at least one player walking out early. Again, no confirmation. But multiple outlets reference it, using the same phrasing, which only made it feel more real. And then came the phrase that froze everything. League awareness. One insider tweeted it without context. Just 2 words. Screenshots went everywhere. Fans panicked. Analysts speculated. Because league awareness doesn't mean investigation. It means eyes are open. And when eyes are open, consequences follow fast. Suddenly, the question wasn't whether Jerry Jeudy was frustrated. The question was whether his behavior, real or perceived, had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Whether comments taken out of context could still trigger real discipline. Whether a narrative alone could be enough to justify action. And right when it felt like the story had peaked, when everyone thought the worst had already leaked, another detail surfaced that shifted the entire conversation again. A name nobody expected. A connection nobody had seen coming. Proof, according to those pushing it, that this situation wasn't isolated at all. Because just when we thought it was over, another name came up. The moment that other name entered the conversation, everything shifted from messy to dangerous. Not because of what was proven, but because of what people were willing to believe. In this league, belief can be just as destructive as facts. And once that door opened, there was no closing again. The new rumor didn't come from a blog. It didn't come from radio. It came from a so-called insider thread that started quietly on a private forum before spilling into mainstream timelines. According to that thread, the tension between Jerry Jeudy and Shedeur Sanders wasn't just about football. It was about influence, about control, about who the organization was really building around. The claim was explosive. Allegedly, Jeudy had voiced concerns behind closed doors about how quickly the offense had been reshaped to fit Sanders. Not publicly, not in a meeting with coaches, but in private conversations that were never meant to leave the room. Words like priority and favoritism were thrown around, and once those words hit the internet, they mutated into something far more toxic. Fans didn't see nuance. They saw betrayal. Suddenly, every past clip felt different. Every old interview got re-watched with suspicion. Every sideline shot became evidence. People slowed down footage just to analyze where players stood during huddles, who spoke to who laughed, who didn't. It became obsessive. And obsession is where careers go to die. Inside the building, pressure mounted fast. Coaches avoided specifics, but emphasized unity. Teammates gave politically safe answers that said everything by saying nothing. And then, quietly, the narrative of consequences began to form. Not officially, not announced, but whispered. Words like benching floated first, then trade value, then the one word nobody wanted to hear attached to a name like Jerry Jeudy. Liability, because at some point, production stops being the issue. Perception takes over, and perception is ruthless. A player can recover from drops, recover from bad games, but once the story becomes about distraction, teams get nervous, front offices get cold, and contracts start looking heavier than talent. According to people claiming knowledge of internal conversations, the Browns began contingency planning. Nothing dramatic, just what-if scenarios. What if this doesn't calm down? What if it escalates? What if the league steps in simply to send a message? The NFL doesn't need guilt to act. It needs headlines that won't go away. Jeudy felt it. Anyone in his position would. Body language changed. Interactions tightened. Where there used to be swagger, there was restraint. Where there used to be confidence, there was calculation. Every move now had consequences. Every word could be clipped. Every reaction could be misread. Sanders, on the other hand, stayed steady, or at least appeared to. He continued to take blame publicly, continued to praise teammates, continued to play the role expected of him. And that contrast made Jeudy's situation worse. Because the more composed Sanders looked, the more isolated Jeudy appeared. Then came the moment that confirmed the shift for many fans. A late game shot, wide angle, no play happening, just players waiting. Sanders talking with linemen, laughing. Jeudy standing alone near the sideline, helmet off, staring at the field. No context, no audio, but the image spread like wildfire, captioned with one word: finished. That's how fast narratives harden. Behind the scenes, speculation about suspension grew louder, not because of a single action, but because of conduct. That vague, elastic concept the league uses when it wants flexibility. Conduct detrimental to the team. Conduct that disrupts cohesion. Conduct that reflects poorly on the shield. None of it needs proof the way fans think it does. It needs justification. And justification was everywhere now. Former players weighed in. Analysts danced around the topic. Everyone spoke carefully, but the implication was clear. This wasn't just about a receiver struggling. This was about whether a veteran had lost a locker room during a sensitive transition period. And once that question gets asked publicly, the answer rarely matters. The damage is already done. For Jeudy, the clock started ticking. 3 weeks left. 3 chances to flip the script. 3 chances to remind everyone why teams believed in him in the first place. But pressure doesn't always create diamonds. Sometimes it cracks foundations that were already fragile. Meanwhile, the organization faced its own reckoning. Stick by a veteran and risk undermining the future? or quietly shift focus and let the narrative play itself out. Neither option was clean. Both had consequences. And the worst part was that this wasn't happening in a rebuild year where mistakes are tolerated. This was happening under expectation, under scrutiny, under national attention. As the final games approached, every target Jeudy saw felt heavier. Every missed opportunity echoed louder. And every successful play felt temporary, like it needed to erase more than just a stat line. Fans noticed the effort. Some appreciated it. Others saw desperation. In the court of public opinion, intent rarely matters. The most haunting part of the situation wasn't anger. It was uncertainty. Nobody knew how this would end. Would there be a quiet resolution, a mutual understanding, or would this become one of those stories players never fully escape, no matter where they go next? Because the league has a long memory, and so does the internet. Careers don't always end with injuries or age. Sometimes they end with a narrative that refuses to die, a story that follows you from city to city, a reputation that overshadows production. And once that label sticks, it's nearly impossible to peel off. As the season wound down, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't just about Jerry Jeudy anymore. It was about how quickly the league moves on, how fast futures get rewritten, and how fragile standing can be when trust fractures under the lights. The building stayed quiet. No statements, no dramatic announcements, just silence. And silence in moments like this isn't peace. It's a pause before impact, because players come and go, teams retool, fans forget details. But stories like this don't disappear. They linger, they resurface, they follow careers like shadows. And while one man stayed in the spotlight, answering questions he never asked for, another walked forward as the face of the future, untouched by the fallout. The season moved on, the games ended, the cameras turned elsewhere. But somewhere between leaked messages, sideline stares, and unanswered questions, something broke that couldn't be fixed. He didn't lose his jersey that night. He didn't get escorted out. He didn't hear the word, suspended, spoken out loud. But when the noise finally died down, one truth remained. The plays faded, the rumors stuck, and long after the crowd stopped watching, the secret stayed. And that's where this story leaves us. Not with answers, but with questions that refuse to go away. Because in today's NFL, truth doesn't always matter as much as perception. And perception, that can end careers faster than injuries ever could. So now the spotlight is on you. Do you think this situation was blown out of proportion by leaks, rumors, and internet hysteria? Or do you believe there's more happening behind closed doors than fans are being told? Was Jerry Jeudy unfairly turned into a scapegoat at the worst possible moment? Or did his own actions, real or perceived, push the situation past the point of no return? And what about Shedeur Sanders? Is he the calm center of a storm he didn't create? Or the quiet symbol of a changing power structure that made veterans uncomfortable? Because one thing is clear, this story isn't over. Not even close. Narratives like this don't disappear, they evolve. And the next headline could change everything we think we know. So I want you to sound off. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us who you think is in the wrong. Or if anyone is at all. Was this a breakdown in communication or the beginning of the end? And make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we're tracking every update, every whisper, and every twist as the situation unfolds. Turn on notifications, because when the next leak drops, you won't hear it anywhere else like you'll hear it here. This is Spill News. And remember, when the cameras turn off, the real stories begin.